today. And so welcome again to everybody from this beautiful land in Ottawa. We do ask that you put in the chat the territory from which you are joining us. And I'm delighted to introduce you to our partners, Gray and Ivy, who will be leading this workshop and will be working with all of you over the course of the next months as you develop these faculty training modules. So we have several people here from Gray and Ivy, but I'm going to introduce Nate Caston, who is the lead today for this workshop, and hand it over to him to introduce his team and to lead this particular workshop. So welcome, Nate. Thank you very much for joining us, and leave it to you to take over from here.
Sure, thank you very much. And I just wanted to quickly touch base on land acknowledgements, and the idea behind it is going to be sort of paramount to all we talk about. And it's not so much the process of doing the acknowledgement, it really is about understanding the uniqueness of the place where you're coming from, locally, nationally, all the uniqueness that comes from each community that we're working with, and that we will be sort of talking about and engaging with, not only in this, but this is just the beginning of what will be a long sort of story and journey for us all. So that really is what we'll end up focusing on as we talk about building these training modules with you guys. So just wanted to touch on that, and now I'll sort of introduce myself. I'm Nate Caston. I'm the founder and CEO of Gray and Ivy. I also am a partner in Grounded Architecture with Sean Bailey and Luxmi and Lori, who I think are joining this, which we'll introduce shortly. Sean is the Indigenous scholar at the University of Manitoba. He's unable to join us now. He's teaching there, but you have to know that I'm not Indigenous, and that's really important to understand in this process, because the whole idea of building these connections is all about everyone coming together and understanding that we all have a responsibility to decolonize our world, create synergies, and create a positive way forward. And so that is really about how do we connect that with your existing worlds. And Gray and Ivy in particular is fundamentally focused on bridging that gap between not only two I'd seen, which is Indigenous knowledge and Western knowledge, but also the gap between a design industry, trades, and the construction industry in general. Because as we start to go down this path, it's going to really be both an extension of Indigenous knowledge and ways of knowing, but also which is fundamental to sustainability as our future, as sort of connecting ourselves to the place and the work that we do. And so understanding what it is to live in a sustainable environment and what that means for our trades and our the industry in general is really how we understand how to take care of our land. And no one has been doing that better and with more acute connection to that than the people who have been here for many, many years before the sort of European colonization took place and got us to this point. I'll get into all that other stuff, but first I want to, Adrian, if you want to introduce yourself quickly as the project lead, and then Bobby, I'll go to you after, and then I'll go through the rest of our team.
Hello, everyone. My name's Adrian, and I'm here working with Gray and Ivy. And one thing that I believe I bring to the team is my background is in educational technology. So hopefully that'll allow for a best bridge between a lot of the stuff that we're talking about. And I'm also excited just as much as all you are to learn and to share from each other.
Awesome, thanks, Adrian. So Bobby works with us quite a bit. Bobby Apatagan. I'll let him introduce himself, but he's sort of inspirational to all the work that we do here at Gray and Ivy. He's been a collaborator of ours through pretty much all we've done, and he's a good friend of mine. So Bobby, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, good day, everybody. I am calling from Cranberry Portage. Nate, you know where that is? It's in northern Manitoba, north of the Paw. I was born in Norway House, Stipi, but grew up in Churchill. I live in Winnipeg now when I'm there. And yeah, I met Nate some years ago, not that long ago, but I really felt connected to what they aspire to do in terms of the engineering mindset, I guess you could say, and working with the earth. And I guess he just happened to resonate with some of the things I had to share, resonated with him in terms of how we connect to our environment, not just the land, but the animals and trees, water, everything like that. And from an Indigenous perspective, what that relationship looks like to us and how we try to preserve that and learn from it and grow with it.
Awesome. Thanks, Bobby. And Bobby's going to be a major part of all we do as well. And something that
major.
What's that? Sorry.
Major.
Major. Yes. What you'll learn about Bobby is he's extremely human and honest and connective, and that's a fundamental part of what this process is going to be like. Right now, I'm doing a lot of talking, but that's not the intent of how this is going to play out. We are going to create a discussion which is going to be tied directly to yourselves as individuals, how you approach all of the work that we're going to do. And then that story is going to be what informs the faculty training modules that you guys will all establish with our collective help. And then we'll be working with the partner groups as well to connect that more directly into some of the more quantitative ways of approaching sustainability. But it all starts with connective nature, of being part of a place, of being part of a community, and being part of a collective effort to move this forward. So that really is Gray and Ivy's role. And from Gray and Ivy, we also have Dilakshi here. So Dilakshi, if you want to quickly introduce yourself.
Sorry, bit of a bad connection, so I had to turn my camera off. But hi, I'm Dilakshi. I just started with Gray and Ivy, and I am one of their instructors, and we work on some research. I have a background in landscape architecture, and I'm excited to be here.
Thank you. Lori or Lakshmi, not sure. Lakshmi, do you want to introduce yourself quickly?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name's Lakshmi. I work with Gray and Ivy, but also with Grounded Architecture and with Sean Bailey. And a lot of the work we do is progressing the idea of what is a decolonized design process. That's some of the research that we're most excited about, and we hope that helps in these conversations moving forward.
Thank you, Lakshmi. So I'm an architect by trade, but I started Gray and Ivy with the idea that there was this disconnection between the design industry and pretty much everything else. Actually, there's this fundamentally broken connection between the process of creating buildings, creating our environments. And I was fortunate enough to, oddly enough, in the pandemic, to be at home with my kids, and they inspired me to teach them how to design and build a playhouse on their own. What I discovered through that process was not was fundamentally shocking to me. It was their capacity to understand these complex ideas that I'd been working in architecture and I've been trained to. They already had it within them. And this is sort of really important to the way you guys approach this as we move forward. And some of you will have a big background in this, and some of you will be new to this. And that's really important because that becomes your support network, basically, for understanding how to connect with these concepts, because they're not straightforward. They're not something that we've been trained to understand and navigate through. And we shouldn't be afraid of that. That's part of this process. And so we strongly encourage everyone to talk about this stuff, not only in these discussions that we have here, but also as you go away with your groups and with obviously the students, because that's really, in the end, what we're looking to influence here is the way of thinking all the way down to the grassroots level. It really is all about building up that understanding, this idea of understanding both Indigenous ways of knowing and Western ways of knowing, and bridging those two things together and weaving them together. So not picking one or the other, or strictly being presented a series of information about a topic, but instead being part of that story. And when you're immersed in that, that really does become part of who you are. And it is this process you'll learn pretty soon. And that's why we're doing this session right now before Christmas, is because we actually want you guys to go away over the holiday break and reflect a bit on this and actually get that dialogue going sooner than later. Because part of this is about sitting back and listening and connecting with yourself, getting out into the environment and understanding more about the place where you're actively working on a day-to-day basis. We all know we're extremely busy. We're always have deadlines, things to do, all that sort of stuff. And that can be a real interference to understanding a different way of knowing and connecting with that. But it's a human way of knowing. And that's really important. And I think that's how Bobby and I connected really, really fast when we first started speaking. And Bobby, obviously, jump in if you ever want to sort of comment on this. But it really was that we were talking about very similar things from two different backgrounds. We were talking about, for example, spirituality, not in a religious sense, but in a sense of connecting to something. What is the spirit of a place? What is the energy of a place? And these are things that we spoke about and we do speak about in architecture all the time. And they become the barrier, actually, as we get further down into the construction ecosystem. Once we start getting into construction in particular, there's a hard line there. It's like that discussion about a spirit of a building or the story of a building. It goes away and it falls right into legal systems and processes and careers and very sort of what do you call it? Segmented roles within the creation of a building. And it shouldn't be that way. We all partner together to create these places. And if we don't have that sense of understanding what we're creating, the value we're creating, and how it impacts the land and the place that we are building this building, we can't understand what sustainability is. So sustainability doesn't just boil down to being able to hit a carbon target or being able to hit LEED certification or whatever it happens to be. It's far more about understanding the holistic impacts of what that building has and how that can be fundamentally different from one place to another. In particular, when we're working directly with First Nations communities and on land that is First Nations communities, but it's all an extension of that. So the destruction of our planet is a result of us humans. And so we have to take the responsibility now to rethink how we do things. And that does start with sort of breaking things down and building them back up again. So that's the gray and ivy side of things. Is something called spatial agency, that capacity to essentially understand how to create, how to make, and what the opportunities that opens. And so bridging Indigenous ways of knowing and Western ways of knowing is fundamental to the work we do at Gray and Ivy. And then on the grounded side, the architecture side, where Sean Bailey is the primary lead, his research has developed these 5 paradigms of decolonizing the design process through Indigenous ways of knowing. And so that expertise, that understanding of what it is to actually fundamentally trying to change the dialogue and the way that we go through projects without eliminating someone or making people feel uncomfortable. It's all about approaching projects in a good way together. And so that is, instead of just focusing on the sort of legal parameters of how we tackle projects, or the sort of the idea that the individual is the creator of a building or the sole single artist, it's understanding that everyone in that ecosystem is part of the creation of that building. And so the decisions made through that entire chain have to then reflect what it is to be both understanding of Indigenous ways of knowing, and as an extension of that, what it is to create and build on this amazing place that we call Earth, North America, this is Turtle Island. That's really understanding that that is our life source, our natural resources, our place we live, and how do we nurture that as opposed to be destructive within it. I'll sort of leave it at that Adrian, for now. If you wanted to sort of prompt how we sort of jump into a discussion or dialogue about this, I also want to say that this particular session is really about breaking the ice on this topic. We're not here today to really sort of get into the nuts and bolts of what this is, and in all honesty, we probably won't be able to throughout the entire process we go through this. This is a building of an idea within all of us, and then how that translates into these training modules. So this really is about how get everyone engaged in this, have you guys thinking. So I'll jump back in. I'll let Adrian sort of give us some prompts or some guidance here forward, and then I'll jump back in as needed.
Thanks, Nate. One thing I want to share right away, because this is a big question mark that came for me when I was first hearing about this and talking about this, is the worry of like pan-indigenizing, and how can we have, like an Indigenous approach, because we can't, include all Indigenous peoples, all the different nations and whatnot. So this is one thing that, was a big question mark for me. And I don't want to get into the 5 Indigenous paradigms that Sean Bailey has developed, but I do want to emphasize that it's about the place. So specifically, your place is what's going to influence this the most. So we're not necessarily talking about specifics in everything that we're going to be talking about, but just a way to approach incorporating your own place. So that's one thing I just wanted to clear up, because for me it was a big question mark on how to move forward, being sensitive to each of our individual places. So now jumping into a discussion, we want this to be as inclusive as possible. So you're welcome to unmute or use the chat if you'd prefer to chat and discuss in that way. But we're going to keep it really open-ended, and just if anyone has anything to share about where their own personal experiences has hit a crossroads with Indigenous knowledges. So yeah, we'll leave it at that. And if anyone wants to unmute or post in the chat, then please step up.
I'll venture out into the wilderness here with you, Adrian. Can you hear
Thank
me?
you. Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah. So it's really an interesting contemplation to hear Nate talk about this and kind of guide us into what this is, and it strikes me as a philosophical understanding of what we're all contributing to, whether it's hard trades in the fabrication of the building, or just the contemplation of that as it's designed, including all the aspects of that. You ask us to reference where we're from, what territories we're from, and I think that's so important. And in a similar way, we should be individually referencing ourselves to what it is that we've experienced along these lines, and I think that's the way that we're going to encourage folks reading these modules down the road to have buy-in on them, and it's a good starting place. I'm very fortunate. I live on Salt Spring Island in the Gulf Islands of British Columbia, and there's a strong effort locally for reconciliation and consultation and decolonization here. But there's also a lot of wealth and NIMBYism and kind of an enclave mentality as well. We all have experiences, as we grew up. We all have things that we can relate this to in our own reference And you know, I'm relating it to my experience working on large custom homes out here as a contractor. I'm relating it to, you know, going on hikes in the forest at the end of the day and trying to personally reconcile what it is that I'm, you know, earning my livelihood on. And you know, I think we can encourage people to find common ground and get buy-in into the importance of um, greening our efforts, of indigenizing our efforts, of realizing that we all are on the same planet together. You know, I don't want to ramble. I don't want to drag on too long, but I think just in addition to referencing the traditional territories of various indigenous cultures that we may be on, wherever that is on the planet, we also want to reference our own experiences with what we're doing. I'm not nailing it.
No, you did.
Uh,
You really did. Absolutely. And that again, I don't want to jump in and always do all the talking here, but that really is that you know, that energy that is within us, those questions that we ask. There are, you know, there are not so much answers, but there's paths to follow. There's ways to connect. It's no mistake that we're drawn to forests and we're drawn to the land and oceans and the things that sort of create the energy of this place, and it's all 100% connected and within us, and it is there from the moment where we're sort of brought into this world. And we don't need to get too far down that philosophical road, but it that is sort of paramount to understanding a place is your relationship to that place, your individual, your family, your community, with that place where you live, you call home, and you nurture. And that's something that we don't talk about a lot. You know, we speak in the, again, the quantifiable. We talk about actions we can take to do things like just really sort of high level, like we recycle, right? We collect and we recycle. We don't really know and understand what that is. We don't know the impacts that we have. It's not direct. Um, Likewise, on the other spectrum, we buy things that show up on our doorstep nowadays without the context to how it was created or the human involvement in producing something with meaning and purpose. And that's what we do on a day-to-day in the construction trades, in the construction ecosystem. We're creating things. We have that we're fortunate to be involved in that process. So it really is about connecting those things. And I'll stop there again because I could go on forever, but I just want to say that you did nail it. And that's part of it, is every time one of you joins this conversation, don't be afraid of finding the right words or finding the exact thing or something, or it needs to be scripted. This is a human experience. And this is only the beginning. Go ahead, Bobby.
Yeah, I can't stay very long. I was pleasantly invited to be part of the introduction, and I'm grateful for that. But before I leave, I just wanted to, share a little bit before I log off Teams. Well, a couple things. One is just quickly, I don't know how to tell this fast, but the story is over 14 billion years old. So sit back. No, just kidding. But before creation, just creator, right? In our ways of knowing. But anyway, when creator, it was always the spirit first. Before we became human beings, we were a spirit. And so we have these heavens that creator had made for us. And one of the things when we were very young in being a spirit, we didn't know how to respect ourselves or our gifts and be responsible to them in a good way yet. So Creator had separated us and gave us each our own heavens and said, there'll come a time when you'll all come together, when you learn how to respect your gifts and your ways of knowing, then you can truly respect everybody else's way. But the end result there is that we all come together with very unique and amazing gifts to share something that's going to probably take us a little bit further than what we're used to seeing nowadays. Because when you're in university, when you're in any kind of education, they tell you about mathematics, they tell you about physics, but they don't tell you the spirituality behind physics. They don't tell you the spiritual responsibility of being a doctor or an architect. But for the reason why Nate and I connected, I think one of the things that I mentioned before is that in our way of knowing, we could never live life without acknowledging the spirit. We can never reconcile with a frog if we don't, even a frog, like we take a frog's life for nothing, we have to reconcile with the spirit of that thing. But reconciliation for us doesn't mean only reconciliation on a cognitive or physical level, but on a spiritual level as well. And one way to describe that is in terms of making laws or establishing laws. Somebody said to a group of us one time, well, why don't you guys go and make your own laws? And I said, because it was never like that for us. Since the creation of our human being, since the first man in our stories, we evolved to understand the laws of the land, to understand the laws of relationships, to understand the laws of being human, being spirit, creator's laws, relationship laws, ceremonial laws, hunting laws. It all comes down to relationships with all life, but we didn't create those laws. We grew to coexist with those laws that Creator already had with us, and understanding that there's such a thing called consequent, which genuine. And so once we started to understand the laws, our language allowed us to talk about the spirituality behind those laws, as well as some of the tangible consequences. So when we work with the land and everything like that, you have to look at the land and you go that everything is perfect. Like, I was up at one of the hydro dams and I wanted to put up a sweat lodge, and they said, no, you can't do that yet. And I said, why not? They said, well, because there's frog dens over there that are strategically placed there. And I said, oh, okay, well, you guys are making a dam here. I guess your strategies must be greater than Creator's strategies, because Creator already had homes for those frogs. So that was my point, was just to say that, we have to learn how to coexist and work with creation and our natural relatives the way creation naturally does it. We have to learn how to do that. But see, the motivation behind our creations isn't always inspired by spirit. Sometimes it's motivated by greed. Sometimes it's motivated by need without vision. And so the vision never becomes maybe what it could be. And so when we come together and we start to understand the vision together, maybe we have a greater chance of understanding the spirituality of our creations and how it fits into everything. I don't know. I hope I'm making some sense to you guys, but the intention of it is that I look forward to learning from you and seeing you guys create. That inspires me and helps me grow. So I'm grateful to have been a part of your day. And I've already met some of you great minds and great people. We've had a sweat together. Luxmi was there. Nate was there. Who else was there? That's all I could see on the screen. But look forward to visiting with you guys more.
Thanks, Bobby. Bobby's going to be around through this entire process, so he'll be helping us navigate all of this craziness as well. So thanks, and we'll see you soon.
Have a good day, guys. Merry Christmas.
So it's not going to be easy to incorporate this into our trades programs, obviously. And we don't have those answers, and this is something that we're going to try to figure out together moving forwards. And thank you, Matthew, for sharing. I think, what you touched upon is that this is philosophical, that's true, and that a place that we start is referencing our territories and referencing our own experiences. I heard the same sentiments being expressed from Bobby right there. Does anyone else want to share, add, or comment? I see a hand up. I don't know. Is it Insi?
Insi.
Did I pronounce
Yeah.
Inji.
Inji.
Yes.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question actually, and it might be very basic. Sorry if it's so basic. I'm relatively new to Canada and relatively new to thinking about the ways of bringing Indigenous ways of knowing and Western knowledge. Actually, the frog example was very helpful that Bobby gave. I was wondering if you could give more concrete examples from the design world that brings Indigenous ways of knowing and Western knowledge into conversation with each other. Also, I like to note that I really appreciate that the word integration isn't used. It's the word is bringing them into conversation with each other, because integration brings risks with it. Yeah, I was just wondering if anybody has other concrete examples.
Absolutely. So, and we'll jump into that in January when Sean is available. He's going to present his 5 paradigms to the group as, again, part of the conversation. But that'll really start to open up the sort of concrete ideas of examples of how this stuff gets integrated directly into, like I sort of mentioned, the design and construction ecosystem. The ideas that Sean will present are ideas that flow through all the work we do. So it's that idea that you start with an idea, and that forms part of the dialogue and the purpose and the meaning of the entire project that you work through. So this starts. I won't dive into it again because Sean really is the expert and he does this a lot better than me. But it really is about fundamentally starting with the land and yourself there and listening. So I will actually, I'll give you guys your sort of homework a little bit early here now, and it has nothing to do with writing or anything. It really is, honestly, the hardest thing to do in our world today is take 2 minutes or 5 minutes outside in an environment and just listen. It can be longer than that. It can be whatever, but it is this idea that over the break, you just find some time alone and exist within a place and listen to what is around. And I don't mean listen just by your ears, but from within your minds. I don't know, and I'm not an expert at mindfulness or anything, but this does tie into that idea that we all have this subconscious and our conscious minds, and they're both operating simultaneously, and yet we only sort of focus on our conscious minds and what we can see, do, and act upon. But there's an entire world of interconnectivity that's happening in our environment, that once we start to connect to it and we realize that a tree is not just a tree, it's a living species that has an interconnected life ecosystem where other things rely upon its health to live. And it's not just a tree, it's actually even has a species of blah, blah, blah. We go on and on. But that's all you've got to do over the break is just find that time and see what that opens up. It's like the slow baby steps down this path. But you'll be surprised and amazed at how much that opens up our capacity to have this dialogue. So,
if it's okay with you, I can quickly talk about not a specific example, but Bobby touched a little bit on how with hydro dams, they try to implant like frog habitats along the dam. One thing about hydro dams, for example, with the lack of consultation, well, for one, like beavers build dams, and how are those built, and how do those reroute the rivers and that, right? When humans construct dams at a larger scale, like it can completely change a watershed or a water system, and those impacts and how that can lead to flooding or like erosion of the landscapes down towards, they're not always considered ahead of time, and then it becomes an after fact that we're trying to fix those impacts as opposed to being prepared for them. Conversations with people who say live in those areas or see those changes on the daily could really make a difference than say living in the city down south and making those decisions and not seeing those impacts firsthand, just as an example of something very broad.
Yeah, I'll just quickly add to that. That is a good example of every building, actually. When we put a building somewhere, we are destroying something else. So it really is understanding. When we take a material from the land to turn it into, a pin for our HVAC systems, or our copper from the land to be part of our cooling system, you name it, this all is destructive in one way or another. And so it fundamentally is about respecting and acknowledging what we're taking is, we're taking something we should be giving back. And so that is fundamental to understanding all of this. And when we reframe our processes with that mindset, it almost becomes very challenging to be destructive. We're all humans who, generally speaking, hope to be doing good and want to be doing good. We just live within an environment that has been all about taking, and it hasn't been about giving back. And that's not just giving back monetarily. That actually, fundamentally, money is a made-up thing. It's a very strange thing. So this idea of giving back and taking is more about this idea of trading with something else natural or another person.
Yeah, I just also want to add, Inji, hope I pronounced that right. I too am frustrated with a lack of concrete examples, but that's kind of the point, in that each person is going to have their own territory, is going to have their own experiences, and our concrete examples might not necessarily like relate well to your context. And this is, in a way, the process that we are going to be working through, and that we somehow need to communicate to other instructors and then students on how to do this process. So I know that's not a satisfying answer, but that's kind of what it's like. I do want to show a concrete example. Of course, this is very contextual, and this is one of Sean Bailey's examples. So I really hope that in the new year when he joins us, he's going to tell us the story better. But this is kind of like a traditional architectural, site plan, like traditional is in like the Western sense. And he gives students this task to create a site plan that really reflects what they want to do. And one of his students has created this instead. And the reason why we love this is that it incorporates culture, it incorporates more feeling, it has like cultural significance in the leather and the textiles and stuff like that. So this attempts to really reference the territory and reference the individual's experience in creating this site plan. And it still has the details that a traditional architectural plan has, but it comes at it from more of like a cultural lens.
For sure. And sorry, I couldn't see that on my screen, so I don't know if everyone else could see
Oh,
it.
no. Okay,
So I don't know, but I do know the image. So it is a really powerful, and Sean will talk about that a bit more. Something I want to say quickly as well is the we reference Indigenous knowledge in Canada because of where we are, but this knowledge is just another way of seeing. And so throughout the world, it's not just Indigenous, it's just understanding that there are these sort of two ways of seeing that can really be advantageous to one another. And so people coming from other countries or new Canadians here have a real amazing opportunity to bring that set of knowledge as well and integrate that with the ideas that we have here in Canada. And that's how we'll grow these, is that is fundamentally part of who you are. So this isn't a Canadian thing. This is something about who you are, what's your background, what is the knowledge and experience of life that you've had, that you can then start to bring to these eventually what will be these training modules. But even further than that, it's that how are we then affecting the industry? How are we affecting the decisions that are being made on the in the trenches, on the ground floor? Like, people who are actively making decisions are in the future are going to be those that are coming through the colleges and the universities. So those are what we have to really focus on, is empowering ourselves and connecting with our place.
I just really quickly want to jump in. You had said that there was two ways of knowing, or yeah, two ways, but kind of going back to what Matthew had said about knowing yourself as an individual, do you think it's less two ways and more of just multiple perspectives coming together then, from everybody as an individual almost, or?
So that's a really important question. That's a sort of philosophically big part of this, is that it almost starts as there's two ways of knowing, and then everyone has their spot within that craziness. It's not definitively one or the other. But when you understand that this isn't a religious thing, this isn't a context of understanding the world in a different way completely as an individual. That is part of what it is in the context of the environment that we exist within. So the experience of an individual within what is traditionally a Western way of thinking will have their individuality, and then they'll have the factors that have been put in place by all these other sort of human created knowledge or experiences. But there's this entirely other additional way, which is sort of fundamentally looking at everything as holistic and as being part of it. And so the individual, we all have individual beliefs and ways of approaching things, and this isn't about saying you're one or the other, but it does boil down to these different philosophies of how to approach our existence that become these two ways of seeing. I don't know if that answered it, but that's sort of the conclusions that I shouldn't say I mean, I've come to in my process, and sort of the definitions of those will never be black or white. It's always gray. That's a reason we're called Gray and Ivy. I won't get too much into that, but that gray area of everything is really that idea of navigating within something that isn't one or the other, but could be many simultaneously.
How are we feeling about these ideas, these topics?
I feel excited and nervous.
That's perfect.
When I was a younger man in community college, I almost by random chance ended up taking 3 classes concurrently. I took philosophy, world religion, and oceanography. And I took them all at the same time from 3 really knowledgeable instructors. I was very fortunate, and it was like this trifecta of global geoscience infused with philosophy and the religious version of the same thing. It was all boiled down to the fundamental questions of life. You know, who are we? Where are we? What are we doing? What's our purpose? What is happiness? How do we integrate that? And it was a lot for a young mind, but it's never left me. And in fact, everything that we do every day, either acknowledges these questions and references them, or denies them and sets them aside. And we go about, trying to pay the rent and the bills and do our jobs. and I think it's an opportunity to, you know, as this knowledge is disseminated through these modules and to the various people that will receive them for whatever reason or purpose, it's an opportunity to help bring balance and restore order into people's individual lives, and, you know, provide a conduit for fulfillment that, you know, still doesn't necessarily answer those questions, but maybe puts things in a more peaceful level. And so for that, I feel really lucky. I mean, I don't think these things, you know, I'm a bit of a magical thinker, and I don't think these things happen for no reason. I think we're all here together today, you know, absorbing this and contemplating ourselves in it. And so I'm excited about it. I'm also nervous because whenever we face these questions, we face ourselves. And so, you know, here we are facing each other.
Absolutely. And that, well, that's, I mean, it's, that was very well said. I just got to say that was, and that is sort of the ideas that we want to be planting in the minds of our future generations, is that journey. And there won't always, sorry, there will never be all the answers. But understanding the respect between one another and our environment will help us grow, and we'll work together, and it'll start to take away from the sense of I need to hurt someone else to benefit myself. It's this idea that we can actually achieve very amazing things. In fact, we'll start to get into further examples of this, but one of when actually the first time Gray and Ivy did our spatial agency programs in actually Cranberry Portage, oddly enough, where Bobby is right now, or we went through this process to design a warming hut. I don't know if you guys know Winnipeg, but we've got these warming huts on our river, which make our winters better. So they're not specifically about actually heat warming, but they're literally about warming the spirit and the soul through design and building. But these students, these high school students that we worked with, they went through this process that we've established at Gray and Ivy, and they designed and built a warming hut where they did all the work, they did all the creation, they did everything. And these were some of the most sort of forgotten students in the system. They had been virtually kicked out of school. They were in what was called the Engaged Learners Program at Frontier School Division. And they're very hard to engage with. Lots of them come from very, very difficult backgrounds in various communities in northern Manitoba, which are very remote. And so all of them jumped right into this process and engaged in this idea because it was an extension of themselves. They could see themselves as part of it, and it ignited an entire community to help them execute this project and get it down to Winnipeg from the north. And it was incredible to watch them, their spirit, their energy, everything, their sort of self-empowerment be uplifted because of that capacity to get your ideas out, to be empowered through the process of making and creating. And that is that's what drove me to architecture. I couldn't define it when I was in school, but it was like, that was the excitement. I could actually be part of creating something. That's why I love to build with wood. I love to assemble things and create things, and the natural materials, and understanding what they are and why they are, and where they're from. Those are all really interesting to me, and they do connect right back to the questions of who we are, what we are, and how we sort of go through our days. And there's a lot of those going through your days has been sort of predetermined by other factors. And so it's being able to take agency over your time, over your path, over your everything, that really does empower folks. And that's what we want to do with the upcoming generations. And part of that is providing the knowledge of really, really, really powerful knowledge of Indigenous ways of knowing, which are very much about coming together, working together, and understanding the context of what we're creating. So yeah, it's super, super, super exciting to be involved in this. Go ahead, Sandra.
I just wanted to pick out a couple of keywords that I'm hearing that I'm not trying to assign homework, but I'm just thinking maybe over the break while people are having that chance to percolate, be outside, contemplate, think about how does this relate to their trade. They could also maybe consider, you know, how reciprocity plays in, like maybe some themes that we can all sort of start to incorporate into all the 4 trades. Be reciprocity, considering place, holistic approaches, and then considering origin. That's like the original existence of materials and what that being was in its original form. And I know that in the Greening the Trades workshop, we'll also look at that sort of embodied carbon and the end of life cycle. So we'll sort of have that like full range of what that life cycle looks like for the materials that we're using. But just to sort of, you know, try to give a little bit of additional homework to think about, you know, how we can not to use that word integrate, but how to start like having some kind of like common running theme between all the different modules.
I do also want to share we do have other homework, Sandra. I'll just share with your screen. We've made a little landing page on our website that we'll share with you, and we're going to constantly, you know, keep it updated. It can be our like asynchronous home for all this stuff, and for people who aren't here to join in. I do want to emphasize, like, I'm sure we've all gone through online discussions before, and you truly do get out what you put into it. So, you know, like the more effort you put into this, you will come out with measurable learning and whatnot. And yeah, please. We'll also share the recording or link to it on here as well. And we have some videos that we can watch. But the most important point is we have a Wakelet board embedded where we can discuss some of these bigger ideas. There's two question prompts that we have, and they both kind of reference like you and your experiences and your knowledges, and trying to see how this all fits into your brain alongside your own experiences and your own education. So this is the little homework that we have, and a way, I mean, homework's a terrible word, a way to keep on thinking about this and discuss and share with each other, because we're all gonna bring forwards our own perspectives, and, you know, in line with a lot of the knowledges that we're gonna be looking at. That's a big point, is how do we honor all of our perspectives and work together? And then hopefully, yeah, Sandra is saying, we'll be able to find some common threads along that, as well as help each other assimilate this knowledge within our own understandings. Are there any questions, comments, concerns? I'll share this link in the chat, as well as we can send it out via email.
I was just going to say quickly, or just to build off of what Adrian was saying there, is you are all experts in your world. That is really important to understand. You are all who we will be learning from at the same time. And it's really about bringing those worlds together and navigating through that together. So you might have a little bit of sort of trepidation about getting into these discussions. It can be both heavy and uplifting all at the same time, but also know that you guys bring a massive amount of expertise that is 100% going to be part of everything we do. So that should or can be sort of the confidence builder, to know that it's only going to build off of what you guys bring to the table. It doesn't take away. This isn't something that should be replacing something else. It really is not been part of my experience in school, and generally speaking in school, until I got into the type of discussions we're having now. So yeah.
Thank you so much for that, Nate. I've been really intrigued by this first taste. I've had the good fortune to meet Sean and hear Sean as well, so I know that you'll be in for a treat when you meet him as well. And Bobby was had provided a really great perspective. So I'm grateful to you for making this work, and to everybody for finding the time just before we all begin to break for holiday time. I know these last week or two can be very, very hectic. And so thank you to Nate and Adrian and your team, as well as all of you folks from our members across the country who took the time out of your busy days. And for those who will be watching the recording, we missed you. And we look forward to seeing you at the next session, which will take place in January. So we will work with Nate and Sean and the team and all of you to pick an appropriate time for a part 2 of this. And in the meantime, I encourage you all to check out the website and the resources. Did you put a link directly to that in the chat so people can bookmark it? Okay, great.
Yes.
So you can find that page easily. So thank you ever so much for this. For me, I'm going on holidays at the end of this week, and I will definitely carry what you said and try to be a little bit more conscious of where I am and what I'm seeing and feeling and hearing and smelling instead of just rushing through my holidays.
That's perfect. Amazing. Adrian, can you put Grounded? I don't know if Grounded's contact info is in there as well, but Grounded Architecture and going through our websites, they're just additional resources. Don't feel like you have to, but there is more context there if you want. And thank you, Judy, for those kind words. Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. We'll see you again. I guess we'll see you next year. It seems like it's the time of the year where we can say that. And
We're going to see them on the 20th.
Oh, right. We have a workshop next week still. Oh, I'm sorry. That's right. We'll be having a workshop with Eco Canada. Exactly. So we'll see you all next week then. Thanks for that reminder. Bye, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.
Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.